This is Festival Sounds. I'm Tilly.
And I'm Bilal.
We have an exceptionally exciting couple of episodes lined up for you.
So you know I love festival lore, and I was lucky enough to be introduced to and sit down with Roy Gurvitz, the creator of Lost Vagueness, the original Southeast Corner venue. So at Glastonbury, before there was Shangri-La, before there was Unfairground, there was Lost Vagueness. And he pulled all of that together, and I spent a day recording with him and just asking him questions about what was festival life like in the 80s, what was early Glastonbury like, and then finally, what was it like creating Lost Vagueness?
And he is incredible. I have watched the documentary Lost in Vagueness on Netflix, and I was in awe the whole time. And the fact that you were there speaking to him, incredible.
And do you know what? I found him to be a very different person to what you saw in the documentary on Netflix. I think you can get it on YouTube now as well. I'll post a link. I found him very friendly, very amiable. I enjoyed my time with him, actually. I enjoyed speaking to him, and I could have spoken to him for a lot longer. It's turned into 3 episodes, which fits quite nicely. Him and festival culture in the 80s, him and early Glastonbury, the first time he met Michael Eavis, and then the 3rd episode is that creating Lost Vagueness.
He's an absolute wealth of Glastonbury knowledge. He has a wealth of great, crazy, anecdotes and stories. He is the man about Glastonbury.
There is something I need to apologise for, though, and that is because we were out in a field, there's a bit of wind noise, there's a bit of bird song, and an occasional plane flying overhead.
It's fine. That's just given the true nature of where you were.
Yeah, and do you know how you and him would get on? The first thing he does in the recording, make fun of my age. Make sure you follow us on Apple or Spotify, and then you'll be reminded when episode 2 and 3 of the Roy Gurvitz special land.
How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
43.
All right, okay.
Or 44 shortly.
I don't understand that, but you're younger than you look.
Oh, wow, that's brutal.
I'm sorry. I did say I didn't want to take it personally.
Yeah,
no, but your hair's sort of going grey, and I don't know. You just have a sort of maturity. I'm saying it, in a positive. I'm trying to dig myself out.
No, don't worry about it. No, it's fine. I've got thick skin, but and I didn't actually take it personally. No, it's one of those things that's always
it was personal, but it's not. It wasn't negative, is what I should have said.
Exactly. It's one of these things actually that people have always assumed that I'm older than I am.
Even on the phone, so it's not necessarily a visual thing. On the phone, you come across as being a more elderly, more worldly person. Should we go outside?
Yeah, let's do it.
It's just such a rare. I say it's rare. I mean, the sun's been shining pretty much every day for the last 2 or 3 weeks, but can't really.
It's gorgeous.
Can't really get enough vitamin D. And some grass over there with a picnic bench. And I just think that's probably a good place to hang out, unless it gets drafty or cold. We can go back inside. Having said that, a lot of the time it's warmer out here than it is in there.
Gorgeous.
So this is my empire.
So what is this your more recent base? You've been here for a while?
I've been here for 12 years. So yeah, it's a sense of accumulation. It's not all mine. I store some stuff here for other people. Right. But the majority of it's mine. I'm certainly responsible for it all. Yeah, welcome to the picnic bench.
Thank you very much. How do you get involved in festivals?
Oh, right. Well, that's going back to the beginning, isn't it?
When is that?
It's the late 70s. I left home and pretty much very rapidly fell into squatting in London. And I did that for about a year or so, and found that it took a lot of effort squatting in disused premises. So you make a home, and then you get evicted, and then you have to gather up all your stuff, go to another place and make a home, and spend a lot of time doing painting and decorating, basically. And then I moved on to this property it's always in London, and I was in Hammersmith, and I had occupied a council depot. So there was a big yard that had been cleared out by the council cleared out, and there was a house that had been converted to offices, but it was still very much a house. So I started living there. It was next door to the Riverside Studios, which is a theatre in Hammersmith, quite well attended. And whilst I was there was the Cirque Imaginaire came to do some shows at the theatre. I think they were there for about a month. And the theatre kindly asked me, I said, the council in the past had let the circus have their vehicles, because they were a touring circus company. They could park their vehicles, even though their performances were in the theatre rather than in their own space. So they parked in the yard. Would it be possible for me to allow them permission, to park there, seeing as I was now in control of the keys of the gate? And I said, yeah, of course, not a problem. They turned up and were there for about a month, and so I saw that was the first time I could see that you could live on the road, I guess. First time I'd seen it with my up close and personal. Anyway, they went on their way, and then I was like, I'd been there quite a while, about 6 months, and then I got a letter from the council saying, they want their property back, blah, blah, blah. And I met another guy called Tim, who turned up one day, and he said, he lived in a bus, and would he be able to park his truck there? And I said, well, you can, but it's going to be a limited amount of time, so I've just had papers through from the council. And I was sort of saying to him about how frustrating it is that, even though the neighbours, the theatre, still able to use the place, and the council aren't doing anything with it. It wasn't necessarily, I wasn't outwardly being political, but housing's always been an issue in London. It just seems absurd that the council has tens of thousands of homeless people on their lists, but won't actually house anybody in a property, because it's not suitable, or not appropriate. Well, anything is suitable if you're homeless.
It's also getting a lot harder to hustle. Early stage artists, they are now from a upper middle class background, because there is no chance of you making ends meet if you don't have cash behind you to make it.
No, well, I think it's been like that for quite a long time.
You think? Even back in the 70s and 80s?
Oh, I think so, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It is a struggle, and I think as artists go, I think without any kind of struggle, it's not really art. It's not really art. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? I look at stuff and I go, oh, well, let's not start talking about art, because that's just another whole.
Well, we'll get.
That's
to
another. We'll get.
We'll get.
You asked me a specific question, and it was obviously taking me too long.
No, it's no, don't. No, it's interesting to hear.
But okay, sorry. I just want to finish my story of how I started. So this guy Tim, he said to me, he said, well, why don't I get a vehicle to live in, and then at least when I get evicted from wherever I'm parked, I don't have to redecorate.
Yeah.
And you just turn the key and off you go. And I thought, yeah, but I can't do it. Yeah, you can. It's easy. Look, obviously I was 19. I had no idea. And he said, look, I'm going to a festival next week. Why don't you come with and see if there's a vehicle there that you might be able to buy and live in? I was like, okay, yeah, I'll do that. So at that time, I was making my money by making doing markets, and I would make little moccasins and take them to market and sell. And I had about 100 pairs of these moccasins that I'd made. So I took them with to the festival. We said, yeah, well, because I said, I can't buy anything, I've got no money. And he said, well, take your moccasins, because there's probably people at the festival that might want to buy them. And then you'll have some money, you might be able to buy them. Okay. So we went off to East Anglia, to a place called Ling, and it was the fairy fair in Ling. It was extraordinary. It really was like a whole new world. It was the first time I'd been to an actual festival, and it was extraordinary. Lots of really friendly people. Everybody very helpful, and there was this bus for sale. I had a quick look at it, and the guy that owned it said, just make him an offer. So I explained I didn't have any money, but I had all these shoes. He said, well, you go up and sell the shoes and come back with the money you sell the shoes for, and it'll probably be enough. Okay. Did that. I came back with 300 quid, which in 1979 was, I don't know, probably quite a lot of money. It was enough to buy a house on wheels. Came back with 300 quid and went, well, I've got 300 quid. And he went, yeah, great. Here's the keys. Here's the logbook. See you later. And that was how I got A, into festivals, and B, into living on the road in a vehicle.
So you mentioned about that festival and how lovely everybody was. Is that the thing that got you thinking, I want to go to more of these festivals?
Well, I could see the vehicle and the lifestyle could fit in, because obviously I bought this vehicle and I was going to take it back to London and park it, but beyond that, I was like, well, where am I going to park this 30-foot long? I can't just park it at the side of the road.
Yeah.
You can't park it in an NCP car park, But I hadn't really thought it through. So I'd taken it back to my yard. When I got back there was, a notice saying, taking you to court in 3 weeks' time. So I had 3 weeks to invent a lifestyle. And obviously, the most obvious one was just go to festivals and trade at festivals. So, yeah, it wasn't like, I've seen festivals over the brow of the hill, I'm going to see what they do. But, I've just been thrown in at the deep end, if you like.
What was it like, festivals in the 70s and 80s? Was it a case of you just rock up and see if you get a ticket on the door, or you just... how did you hear about them?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, there was very much two different types of event. There was the free festivals, where, it was open to all. And then there was the established paying music concerts that turned themselves into festivals. So the first gate that I'd arrived at with my bus, I think pretty much as I remember, was the Elephant Fair.
Okay.
And I turned up literally behind another bus. I thought, oh, well, this is good. What I didn't realise was that the other bus was a kind of known convoy bus that had been in the news and had some, what the festival was describing as undesirables, and didn't want to let them in. And because I had arrived behind them at pretty much the same time, I was now these undesirable people. Even though I'd never even met the people in the bus in front, I was just the same. I was, typecast in the role of undesirable bus dwellers, which I knew nothing about. I didn't even know that was a thing. And so at the gates of the Elephant Fair, it was down in Cornwall, driven 300 miles to get there. Wasn't really much chance of me going anywhere else. so it instantly became confrontational.
Growing up, the images, rightly or wrongly, that were associated with festivals was, for me as a child, I remember seeing the amazing, like the tents, the sprawling tents and musicians, and then the police vans and the confrontation. Like, those were very polarized images, but growing up, that's what I can remember seeing. Is that pretty much what it was?
Yeah, I think to some extent, but it was kind of random in so much as I could at the time, around the time of the early 80s, I could go to 6 or 7 different festivals and never see a police vehicle. And then you go to another one, all hell would break loose. So there was no consistency. Yeah. It was pure pot luck. And I think the more friction that was offered, so the more by the mid 80s, when there was quite a lot of police activity trying to shut things down, it became more of a mission and became more militant, if you like. More people wanted to oppose and confront that by way of demonstration. So it's like one of these sort of things. I often see sort of, riots is the right word, but confrontations with police in a lot of cases, and you just sort of go, if the police weren't there would be no confrontation. I mean, equally you could say, well, if the people weren't there, there'd be no confrontation, but the people have to be somewhere. The police don't. You go to a secluded bit of woodland somewhere in the middle of absolute nowhere, and the first thing you come across is 4 busloads of riot police. Yeah, why are they there?
That's really interesting.
They're there for a fight, Well, okay, if that's what they want, then that's what they shall have.
And that is really interesting, because the people I speak to who were at that era of festivals tell me that actually the festival was just going along quite nicely, be it a free festival, whatever it was, and everyone was getting on, everyone was having a good time, and they would have cleaned up after themselves and left, and they did feel it was unnecessary, like some of the behaviour. Look, I wasn't there. I'm going off what they've said to me.
No, it was absolutely that, and it became political, because, like with all governments, they really like to find a minority group to make an example of, because that then keeps other larger minority groups in line. Yeah. Do as we say, or this will happen to you. And at the time, what we were dealing with was Margaret Thatcher, and Margaret Thatcher's big issue at the time was with the miners, and they were a big force. There was tens, if not hundreds of thousands of miners at the time, but there was only a few thousand sort of traveller, hippie, festival type people. And I think she underestimated it, because there was actually a lot more, but she didn't realise how mobile we were, even though we obviously were all living in vehicles, so we were pretty mobile. But that wasn't something that had entered into her psyche. She just sort of demanded that, we be put a stop to. And she did technically declare war on her own people in, when was it, 87? And she used the travellers purely as a scapegoat, because we weren't causing a problem, but she thought it would be an easy one for the police to put a stop to, so they can then turn around and go to the miners, oh, we'll do the same to you. And the miners just went, yeah, whatever. Give it a try, do you know what I mean? Yeah. So it didn't really work, but nonetheless we got hammering because of it, and it culminated at the Beanfield in, when was that, 85.
What was that?
That was the government turning the British forces, and I say forces because it wasn't just the police, it was the military as well, and completely attacked and destroyed a load of peaceful people with families and kids in a field. They directed them off the road into a field, and attacked them. I mean, I don't know if you've seen any footage of that.
I haven't.
Something worth looking up. Funny, some of that footage is at the beginning of my film to give context to where Lost Vagueness sort of came from, in a way.
It sounds like a hard time.
It was very hard. Yeah, it was very hard, and that's why I said to you earlier, not in this recording, that I know, I have some idea of what it's like to be persecuted for, obviously not for my colour, and I had a choice not to, but it was for my belief. And I think belief is more than skin deep. If you really believe something, it doesn't really matter what colour you are. You're identifiable through your belief. And so after that, it gave carte blanche for any Tom, Dick and Harry who parked up in a lay-by or driving down the road to throw shit at us, to throw petrol bombs at us, to and you're sort of going, what harm am I doing? But people get offended by other people's beliefs.
Yeah, it's funny because that polarisation that we see today, I definitely remember growing up with it in the 80s as well. I remember it more in the 80s than the 90s, where you could see it was...
Are you talking about you personally, or...
Oh, no, just generally what I would see in the media was you could see that government against people really manifest itself on the news. And I had parents who, would avidly watch the 6 o'clock news, and as a child you'd see it, and you could see that friction between government and its people, and that polarisation. We think it's a new thing, but actually it was there then.
I mean, I say it's happening again now. It's still happening now. Yeah. I don't think it's ever really gone away.
How did that free festival spirit and world carry on in the face of all of that?
Because you can't kill a belief. You can't. People have tried throughout the centuries. People have tried really hard and have very determined attempts to put a stop to belief systems, and on every occasion, it's not succeeded. The belief you can't get in completely inside people's heads,
and with that belief, that determination, and you were really mobile, I imagine it was hard to keep up with you. Like, you as a group could be anywhere, any time, and you'd have to keep moving, sadly.
I think as a group, I think it was much easier to pinpoint an attack. It was easier as individuals to hide in plain sight.
Yeah.
I think after that, the groups, it was apparent. Well, obviously, it became unlawful to travel in a group. So there was the Criminal Justice Act that said six vehicles was a criminal offence. And then they would start. There were even situations where you'd be parked up on your own, and you'd have like a bicycle, and a friend would come and visit in a car, and there'd be a sack barrow, and they go, well, they've all got wheels, they're all vehicles, so there's 6 vehicles here, so you're committing a criminal offence, you must go immediately. Do you know what I mean? So it was like, oh, well, this is absurd, you know what I mean? And I think because they pushed it to the point of absurdity, you just went, well, I'll have to. People just went, well, we'll ignore this, because there's no difference between applying it to ourselves and going, okay, we won't travel with 6 vehicles, we'll just travel with 2. Made no difference, because then they'd count bicycles and pushchairs, So we were criminalised as a group, as a people, as a belief. I don't know what we were. We were just individuals kind of trying to live our lives,
Were those festivals and that free festival movement, was that the way of kind of countering all that negativity you were facing, or was that there anyway?
Well, the free festivals were there to start. I mean, there's been history of festivals back through the ages. Like there are charter fairs, things that were charter fairs. So there was I don't know all of them. I know there was a charter fair in Nottingham, which was the Goose Fair, that, as far as I'm aware, has been there since the 18th century. Strawberry Fair was another one, which was originally a charter fair, but that was wiped away, but it kind of reinvented itself later. And to this day, I believe that Strawberry Fair in Cambridge is still a free festival,
right?
Albeit very contained and managed, but it is still in essence a free festival. So, and then you've got the horse fairs, which again are charter fairs. So you've got Appleby, for example, and Stowe, and they present. And I'm doing the inverted commas things in the air, which I hate doing, but seeing as it's Easter, it's like the Easter Bunny. They're problematic.
Yeah.
But again, they're only problematic to the people that don't want them to happen. People that go, well, I bought a house here for £4 million. I don't want bloody people with horses trotting up and down. I've got my own horses to trot. Do you know what I mean? It's like that, and it's the hypocrisy of it all. It's going, we can't have these people with horses. They might infect my horses, or just ridiculous things that people come up with to go, I can do this, but you can't because I've got a lot of money and you haven't. And I just see that being a kind of narrative to most of these problems.
But then on the inside, once you're in those festival environments, what were they like?
Well, very much like the rest of the world, with some people doing things that you don't want them to be doing and other people doing differently, and everybody's got a different idea, and somehow you have to try and manage it all to make it work. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't.
What was the emphasis in there? Is it the music? Was it the kind of political activism? What went on inside them? Or was it all of that?
I guess it is all. I guess it is all of it. And if you've got 2,000 people at an event of that sort of nature, you've probably got 2,000 reasons for people to be there. I think to some extent, and certainly around that time, I think it was probably a bit of a safety thing. Even though the more people there were, the more authoritarianism it seemed to attract. But again, because there was more people, it still felt safer. I mean, if you'd gone to a festival and there was only 100 people, I dare say I dread to think what might have happened. But once you're over sort of 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people, then you sort of outnumber the authorities, and then they can only pick you off as people are arriving or leaving, rather than storming in. I mean, I've seen terrible footage in Germany of sort of festivals and raves where the police do storm in, regardless of how many people there are, and they just, start firing off CS gas and come through with armoured vehicles and just drive into sound systems and, destroy stuff.
Were you working at them, or were you just enjoying the festival?
No, I think invariably I was working to some extent. Working's a funny word, isn't it? In the same way as volunteering. It's somewhere between working and volunteering.
It won't surprise my listeners that I've already spoken to you about my volunteering. They probably bought on, here we go, Bill, I'll talk about volunteering again.
Yeah,
you copped that as well.
I think the word is participating.
Yeah.
I think back then people participated. Without the people that were there purely to enjoy themselves, who in my mind were also participating. They're an important ingredient of the people that are playing the music on stage. If people are playing the music on stage and there's no one there to listen to it, what's the point of that?
And the whole premise of Festival Sounds is that bringing people stories to light. People make festivals. People make them special.
And so it was. I definitely participated. And everybody that participated found their own little niche. I did for some time have a Whole Foods shop in the boot of my bus when I had a bus in the early days. When I'd been squatting in London, I'd also became a sort of a distribution point for a Whole Food company from Bristol to distribute in London.
Right.
And they'd come up with an 18-ton lorry, and we'd unload it into the basement of our house that we were squatting, and then we distributed it, the Whole Foods, to Whole Food shops around London, like Neal's Yard and various other places. And then when that got sort of shut down, we left that. By which time I'd had the bus, I moved the sacks of Whole Food into the boot of the bus, and I'd go to the festival, I'd open the boot of the bus, and hey presto, there I was selling rice and beans, lentils to people.
Yeah, because this image of
it's a trading point. I think the festivals are essentially there for people to trade.
This modern image of a festival versus what it was. People cooked more. They made their own food more. They didn't go to food vendors to buy pasta or pizza or whatever. Well, they were self-sufficient.
Well, again, yes and no. So, I'd be there with like sacks of rice, and people would buy them, and then they'd like cook a big pot of rice and sell it to the participants that were dancing.
It's a lot more spontaneous.
It was organic. Yeah. It was more organic, but it was in the true sense of a festival. It was a market. It was a place to trade. After a while, after I realised that actually selling Whole Foods was a bit of a slow battle, really, and I discovered this place called Richard's Castle, who made fruit wine. And I would buy barrels of their wine, and then I would go to festivals and run a wine bar. Sounds awfully middle class, but
you had me won over when you said I've got a barrel of wine. That sounds great. Sounds like the kind of person I could get on with.
But I could see that there were people selling crates of beer. So people would go to a cash and carry and buy cans of Stella, and I just wanted to find my own thing. I wanted to find something that somebody else wasn't doing, because obviously there was also a lot of competition, and also sometimes people got a bit offended by you kind of moving onto their patch, doing what they were doing.
Yeah.
So there were plenty of bars. I mean, there was never any shortage of bars on a festival site, but I had the only wine bar, and despite getting some criticism for being middle class, I also had quite a lot of customers. So it was like, well, it's just supply and demand, isn't it?
Did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy running a bar and that mixing with the people who were having a good time at the festival?
Uncomfortably, yeah, I think I did. I stopped enjoying it after years and years of it, and found myself stuck in this sort of world of having to deal with really annoying drunk people.
Tries your patience after a while, I'm sure.
It does, and getting it from both sides. So generally getting the criticism of being middle class by running a wine bar, yet at the same time. So, like for example, at Glastonbury, there were plenty of bars during the weekend, and the reason that occurred, or part of the reason, was that a lot of the site crew were very poorly paid, but part of the deal was at the weekend of the festival you could trade. You could pretty much do whatever you wanted. And so people would set up sweet shops, sort of confectionery, or people would do sell toilet paper. Mostly people sold beer, because some people sold food. Running a cafe was quite hard work, but it is wholesome. You got to eat. Other people just run bars that sell beer, and some people just wholesale beer out the back of a Luton van. Other people would sell it by the pint with a bit of entertainment with it. You know, everybody had their own approach, and I had a wine bar. All right, at least I would sell wine. So when I first went to Glastonbury, I think I literally just had a Land Rover and a barrel of wine, wooden oak barrel in the back of the Land Rover with a tap on it and some cups, and I would sell cups of wine literally off the side of the drag. And when I got bored of it, I'd shut the tailgate and I'd go and park out the way somewhere and put a tarp over and then come back at a time that, you know, felt appropriate to me, and when people wanted more. So I would sell wine at the side of the drag, and then that started to become a bit tedious. So I had other people that would go, hey, you know, why don't we do this and do something together, you know, and I could sell wine and they could set up a stage and play music and, you know, actually set up a small venue.
You've heard that. What did you think?
I think, honestly, I'm in awe. What a man. Festivals in the 80s sound crazy.
And all of that civil unrest and how he was in the middle of it. I mean, I enjoyed the story about barrels of wine, mostly. But I would. And we've teased a little bit about him starting to work at Glastonbury. We got all of episode 2 with Roy is about that Glastonbury early days and what it was like. Give us a follow on Apple or Spotify. If you've enjoyed the episode, why not give us a 5-star rating? It'll help us grow the show.